Hello, Get Ready podcast viewers. Thank you for coming into my space. I am your host, Christina, and I just want to say thank you for being here. So, on today's episode, one of the things I kind of want to touch on, which is really the basis of what this podcast is about, is your relationship with Christ, my relationship with Christ, our relationship with Christ. Now, if we're being honest here, having a relationship with God is not always the easiest thing. Especially depending on where you find yourself in your relationship with God. Sometimes it feels as if He's gone silent on us and we've kind of got to figure it out on our own. I've experienced this. Sometimes you feel an overwhelming sense of His presence that's so evidently with you. And even then, sometimes you can feel not even worthy to be in that presence. But I am here today to remind you of the goodness of the Lord and the grace He has placed on your life through faith in Jesus Christ. Okay. So if you're not a believer, if you don't know where you stand with God, this message could generally help you. This is coming from someone who grew up a believer in Christ wholeheartedly. In my heart, I grew up believing in God. And somewhere along the line, I allowed the things of this world to confuse my heart and place bitterness and distance between me and God. Um, I stopped believing Him for the things I knew Him to be of, and I stopped seeing Him in my own sight, and I started seeing Him in the world sight. That being said, I had to have a reality check earlier this week. I was going through some things that were kind of displayed outwardly, affected me spiritually. And, I kind of found myself feeling how I felt before I stepped out of faith, my relationship with God. I was walking to the store, and I actually love going on these walks because the one thing I get to look forward to is my one-on-one communication with God. And I wholeheartedly believe that God can handle all of our human emotions. And the the best thing you can do with yourself, with for your relationship with Christ, is to be real in conversation. Be real in your conversation. I cannot tell you the burden that was lifted off my chest, lifted off my spirit when I found myself able to be open and vulnerable with God about the things I was feeling, the things I was thinking, and what I was going through. And so on this walk, I just, you know, let God have, I let Him have it. I said, I'm feeling the way I was feeling before I stepped out of my faith, and I don't know why. This is me talking to the Lord. I said, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I feel stuck. I feel like I'm starting right back over where I left off. I feel like I'm losing everything I had. And I told the Lord, I said, I honestly feel like I had more when I stepped out of my relationship with you than when I came back into my relationship with you. Now, I'm not, I wasn't saying these things to blame God for what was going on, because I know that even when we don't see what's going on in the midst of our circumstances, I know ultimately God is working for our good. But I knew that I needed to get this off my chest, and He is my safe place. Anything that's bothering me, disturbing me, anything that's sitting heavy in my spirit, I know that God is able to handle all of that. Because I do like to encourage people, be honest with God with how you feel. However you're feeling, be honest with Him. He can handle your honesty. If the world can't handle your honesty, if you can't handle your honesty, God can handle your honesty. And in that moment, where I was venting to God about how I was feeling, where I was at, and, just what was going on in my life. He opened my eyes to something that I didn't quite see before. Um, he reminded me that my circumstances do not determine his goodness, be it good or bad. My outward circumstances don't determine what my relationship with him is doing for me in my life. Um, and it can be hard to grasp that sometimes when you feel like you're in a whirlwind of trouble, you're in a whirlwind of circumstances that you didn't put yourself in. When you feel like, when you feel trapped, when you feel like there's no way for you to escape, there's no way for you to get out, and you just want to explode, but you can't because you feel like you have to contain everything in the box. And so, um, he reminded me of the grace that I have over my life. And that being said, how much worse things could be. And don't get me wrong, I've been in worse. I've been in bad predicaments. I've been in situations that I couldn't get myself out of. But by the grace of God, I am here today to tell you this story and to tell you how important it is to really speak to God. I think right now that's one of the strongest tools in my spiritual belt that helped me in my day-to-day struggles and my day-to-day life. Sometimes I don't feel as if I can always go to other people, and that's okay. Sometimes I don't feel like writing it out is going to help me, and that's okay. But my safe space is going outside, going on the front porch, going for that walk, and talking to God and letting Him know how I really feel. Um, Again, I say he can handle all your emotions. He just wants you to come to him. What I'm thinking about right now is Moses, when God called him to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let his people go. And one of the things Moses said multiple times in multiple processes of the situation was, I'm slow at speech. How can you use me to go speak to this king, to this mighty man, and tell him to do this, that, and the third, and my words ain't worded, basically. And as I was reading it, it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to read it yourself. And as I was reading it, I'm just like, this man really does not believe in himself. Like, even though God is literally telling this man that, hey, I need you to go and do this because, the conversation that they had, hence the word conversation, because Moses wasn't just blabbing to himself. He wasn't talking to his friends. He wasn't consulting nobody else. He brought his own personal issue with God. Even in the thing God was calling him to do, Moses still brought his issues to God. So that's just one of the most important things I really want to convey here today, on this episode of Get Ready Podcast, is your emotions are not too big for God to handle. They may be big to you and big to the world, but to God, He knows what to do with all of that. He created all of that, and He wants you to find a safe space with Him where you can bring these things. Okay. So that's really the basis of what I want to get at, because I really want my followers, I really want my viewers to understand that you're going to have days in this walk of faith where you're going to feel icky. You're going to feel not the best. You're not going to feel 100% you. I don't always feel 100% at my best. I don't always feel 100% Christina. But I bring these trials and these struggles to God, and I do my best to take heed to what He does give back to me, what He does place back into my spirit, And I walk with that, and I walk with him, and I walk with God. One of the other things a lot of people have already heard me mention and say a lot of time is, prayer. Now, I do kind of have there is this differentiation for me personally in prayer and talking to God. When I'm doing my prayer, there is an intention to convey something to God. When I do my prayer, there is an intention to, you know, even if it's not just for me, I want to pray on someone's behalf. The prayer and the communication have slight differences for me. When I'm communicating with God, I'm talking about almost anything and everything. Where I might pray, I might be like, Lord, um, one of the things I need help with right now is my spirit. I'm feeling troubled. I don't know what to do right now. I need you. Now, if I'm going to go communicate with God, I'm going to talk to him like I'm talking to my best friend, or I'm talking to my mom, or I'm talking to my brother or my sister. Like, listen, Lord, like this is starting to feel a little heavy on me. Okay. This is starting to feel like this. And, let me think. Okay. So, when I go on my walks, when I walk from here and I'm going to the store, because usually if I'm walking, I'm pretty much going to the store that's not too far up the street from the apartments I'm staying in. Uh, these are times for me to talk to God, not just pray, but to have communication, have a conversation. So in a conversation, when you're talking to somebody, you might start off, "Hey, how you doing?" Other person might respond, "Oh, I'm doing fine." But that conversation is going to lead somewhere. It's not going to stay in a box. It's not going to stay in the parameters of one topic. When you're having a conversation, it's likely to go from point A to point C to E to R to, you're going to talk about multiple things. So you're not just going to talk about how y'all doing. You're not just going to talk about the weather. Y'all might be catching up. You might be talking about the kids. You might go from talking about the kids to where you may not necessarily be expecting this person to give you something about your situation. I think with prayer, there's a little bit more expectancy, but with conversation, you are just, you're giving an ear to somebody and you're also receiving an ear from somebody. So you have someone who's listening to you while you're also listening to somebody else, however the conversation may flow. Um, the basis of really what I'm trying to get at with today's episode is I want you to focus on your communication with God, your prayer life with God, and how you talk to him and how you talk to yourself. Because I do think that how you talk to yourself plays a big role in how you communicate with God. I have noticed that because I physically speak to myself. I talk to myself out loud. Maybe doing something like, "Hey, Christina, like today it was really hard for me to get myself up, going, and get ready so I could do this podcast for you guys." What I did to get through that is I talked to myself through it. I got up out of bed. I'm like, "Okay, Christina, you got to get this done. It's not that hard for you to just get up, do your hair, wet it, comb it, brush it out, put some ponytails in. That's not too hard for you to do. You've done that several times. You can do that. That's easy. You can get up." And this is how I'm talking to myself. And in turn, God is hearing me and he's listening to me. And, what I received in my spirit in that moment from God is, "You got this. I called you. You were called. Get up and go." And that is just the gist of what the Lord has spoke to me in spirit. And as I'm in the bathroom and I was bent over and I think I was getting the ponytail holders off the thing that they come on, the Lord is sharing this in my spirit, because at the end of the day, this podcast, this YouTube channel is not just about me, even though I do have my own growth and things that this helps me with. It's not just about me, it's about you. It's about the people around you, and it's about the people of God's kingdom who He has called, who need encouragement, who need help, who need to hear that they're not the only ones going through what they're going through, who need to know that they're not crazy. And so I allow, my communication with myself to also strengthen my communication with the Lord. So I do hope that that helps somebody. I appreciate you guys for tuning in with me. If you enjoyed this episode, if this has helped you today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment down below. Now, to leave you guys off on a tidbit of something new that I'm doing, I am going to start doing weekly questions. Uh this is new for you, for me, but the purpose of these questions is basically to give you some a self-reflect moment, just to give you a moment of self-reflection, not anything too crazy, too spontaneous, but ask yourself this question. The question I have for us all today is, who can use some grace in your life? Who can use some grace in your life? For me, not to sound too cliche, I could most definitely use some grace, some self grace, self sufficient grace in my life. Sometimes it's real easy for me to be real hard on myself. I, kind of tend to want to perfect things before I get them going. And when things don't go as perfectly as I planned for it, it's easy to be down, for me to be down on myself. So one of the people in my life who can use grace is myself. So answer the question down below in the comments. Let me know what your answers are. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a blessed one.